The night Emma Clark opened her front door, her life quietly split in two. Outside, snow rested lightly on the sidewalks of a calm New England street. Inside, warm lights glowed, music moved gently through the rooms, and a carefully planned evening waited to begin. To anyone passing by, it looked like a simple celebration. But Emma knew better. This night was not about guests or small talk. It was about a choice she had avoided for years. She stood at the top of the stairs, holding the railing, listening to the sound of Daniel Harper unlocking the front door below. The click of the lock echoed louder than it should have. Her heart followed it down the hallway. 3 hours earlier, Emma had told herself she wouldn't host this gathering at all. She had come home from work early, dropped her keys on the table, stood alone in the living room, staring at the empty space. The promotion she had worked toward for years should have made her happy. Instead, it felt unfinished, like a sentence without a period. That's when Daniel arrived. He let himself in the way he always did, calling her name softly, already sensing something was off. He had known her long enough to read the silence. Emma didn't greet him right away. She was upstairs, sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at her open closet. The closet held more than clothes. It held time. Dresses from weddings she attended alone. Jackets from winters she spent pretending she wasn't lonely. Shoes bought for nights that never became memories. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, watching her quietly. "You're overthinking again," he said. Emma smiled without looking at him. "I'm thinking exactly the right amount." He stepped closer, his eyes moving over the closet. Then he reached in and pulled out a simple blue dress. Not flashy, not loud, just steady. "This one," he said. "It feels like tonight." Emma stood and took it from him. "You always know," she said softly. "That's because you never change as much as you think you do." She changed into the dress while Daniel turned away, giving her privacy. The room felt close, filled with things unsaid. When he helped zip the back, his hands were careful, distant. Like he was afraid of crossing a line they had drawn years ago and never erased. Downstairs, Daniel took control the way he always did. He adjusted the lights so they were warm but not bright. He set music Emma didn't remember choosing. Songs that carried history. Songs from road trips, late dinners, moments where their shoulders touched for just a second too long. Emma noticed everything. "You didn't play my playlist," she said. Daniel shrugged. "This one feels more honest." She didn't argue. As the house slowly prepared itself, Emma moved from room to room, straightening things that didn't need fixing. Her hands shook slightly. She told herself it was just nerves. Everyone felt this way before hosting a party. But this wasn't just a party. When the first knock came, Daniel was already at the door. Emma stood back, hidden near the staircase, watching him through the open space. He smoothed his shirt, took a breath, and opened the door with a smile. "Welcome," he said. The word landed hard in Emma's chest. Guests filled the house quickly. Laughter grew. Compliments followed her wherever she went. People congratulated her on the promotion, admired the house, asked about her life like they knew it. Emma answered easily. She had practiced this version of herself for years. Daniel moved through the room like he belonged there. He poured drinks, introduced people, remembered names. He was the quiet center of everything, the person who made things work without ever asking for credit. Emma watched him from across the room and wondered when her life had started leaning on his presence so heavily. Between conversations, memories surfaced. The rainy bus stop in Toronto where they met, sharing an umbrella, laughing at nothing, promising to grab coffee someday turning into years. Breakups they helped each other survive. Career setbacks they talked through at midnight. Long drives where silence felt safe instead of awkward. So many moments that felt like almost something. Emma shook the thought away as another guest greeted her. She told herself she had invited someone new tonight for a reason. Someone who didn't know her history. Someone who could change the direction of things. Still, every time her eyes searched the room, they found Daniel. As the night moved on, the music shifted slightly, becoming softer. Emma noticed Daniel standing near the hallway, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. There was pride there, and something heavier. She walked toward him. "You're doing too much," she said lightly. "Someone has to," he replied. "You always do." He looked at her then, really looked at her, like he was trying to memorize something. "You look strong tonight," he said. Emma swallowed. "You picked the dress. That doesn't mean you didn't choose to wear it." Before she could respond, the doorbell rang again. Daniel turned toward the sound. "I've got it," he said. Emma stayed where she was, listening as he opened the door, welcomed another guest, stepped aside. With each person who entered, the house felt fuller and Emma felt closer to something she wasn't ready to name. She realized then that Daniel wasn't just helping her host. He was letting her move forward, even if it meant leaving him behind. The thought scared her more than she expected. As the first hour passed, Emma felt the weight of the night settle in. This was no longer about celebration. It was about truth, about whether the connection she had built her life around was holding her in place or giving her room to grow. She caught Daniel watching her again, his smile softer now, his eyes careful. Neither of them spoke. The music played on, the guests laughed. And somewhere between the open door and the blue dress, Emma felt the moment approaching, the one that would change everything, whether she was ready or not. The room was alive with chatter and laughter, but Emma Clark felt as if she were moving through a dream. Every corner of her home seemed familiar, yet charged with tension. And every smile she gave carried a secret she wasn't ready to reveal. The first guest had already arrived, and more were on their way. Glasses clinked, voices overlapped, and the soft music Daniel had set floated through the air like a gentle current, tying everything together. But Emma's eyes kept finding him, Daniel Harper, the one who had picked her dress, chosen the songs, and somehow orchestrated the evening to make her confront her own heart. She drifted through the crowd, speaking to coworkers and old friends, nodding and laughing at jokes, all while feeling the invisible weight of his presence. He moved with ease, offering drinks, introducing people, keeping the energy smooth and effortless. Emma could feel the history between them in every glance he cast her way. In the way he handed a glass to someone with a quick, knowing smile. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there, reminding her that Daniel wasn't just a friend. He had always been more. And then Lucas arrived. He wasn't supposed to change anything. He was charming, polite, and genuinely interested in her life. Emma had invited him carefully, hoping to step into a world beyond the one she had built around Daniel's quiet stability. Lucas greeted her with a warm handshake and a friendly smile, complimenting her dress, the house, even the music. Emma laughed easily, felt the spark of excitement that came with meeting someone new. Someone who didn't know the history written in every corner of her life. But Daniel noticed immediately. He straightened slightly when Lucas entered, his voice carrying a subtle edge as he exchanged greetings. Emma's stomach tightened. She had expected curiosity, but this was something sharper, silent claim, not of ownership, but of significance. She realized then that Daniel's feelings, though unspoken, ran deeper than she had allowed herself to see. The night moved quickly. Conversations blurred, and Emma found herself pulled between two worlds, one of comfort and history with Daniel, and one of possibility and novelty with Lucas. Each laugh she shared with Lucas carried a twinge of guilt, because Daniel's presence was constant, grounding, and unshakable. She felt herself being tested, torn between the safety of familiarity and the thrill of something uncharted. At one point, she excused herself and went to the window, Lucas following shortly after. The snowfall outside seemed brighter, reflecting the lights from her home. Lucas talked icily about his job, his hobbies, stories of travels, and Emma found herself smiling in a way she hadn't in months. But when she glanced back toward the living room, she saw Daniel watching. His posture relaxed yet alert. His gaze held questions she didn't have answers for. Every movement he made was deliberate, every small gesture a reminder of how deeply he knew her. She tried to focus on Lucas, to let herself imagine a future where she could explore new paths. But the memory of the blue dress, Daniel's careful touch as he helped her zip it, and the way he had adjusted the music with her in mind pulled her attention back. She realized that Lucas could never compete with the history, the understanding, and the silent care that Daniel had offered her for years. Yet she also realized that she couldn't ignore the pull toward something new, something that promised fresh beginnings. As the evening continued, the music shifted again, slower now, intimate without being intrusive. Emma found herself in the kitchen, staring at a glass of wine she hadn't touched. Daniel entered quietly, leaning against the counter, watching her with that same steady look that had always unsettled her. "You're watching everyone like a general surveys a battlefield," she said softly. "I'm just making sure no one hurts you," he replied, but the words carried a double meaning. Emma laughed a little too sharp and looked down. "No one's going to hurt me tonight." "Not physically," he said, and she met his eyes. There was honesty there, raw and unfiltered. "But tonight is about choices, Emma, and I can't make them for you." She swallowed hard. His words rang true. The night was more than a gathering. It was a test of her heart, of what she wanted and who she wanted to be with. Emma had invited Lucas intentionally, hoping to see if her heart could move forward. But being here, seeing Daniel's careful attention, the way he anticipated her needs, she understood something she hadn't admitted before: her past. Her history and her love for Daniel weren't things she could outrun. The moment stretched, filled with the faint notes of the music, the laughter of the guests, and the quiet understanding between them. Neither spoke for a long moment. Emma realized she had been waiting for a signal, a sign, anything to tell her which direction to take. But the truth was, the signal had been here all along, unspoken and patient. When she finally looked up, Daniel was closer, his presence grounding her in a way she hadn't expected. "I let the first guest in," he said, voice low, "because I knew you needed to see everything clearly. You always do." Emma felt a shiver run through her. She wanted to step forward to lean into the future that Lucas represented. Yet every instinct in her body pulled her back toward Daniel. She had built her life around security, trust, and quiet love things that Daniel had always given her without asking for anything in return. The night pressed on. More guests arrived, more laughter echoed through the rooms. But Emma and Daniel remained in their private orbit, their conversations silent but heavy with meaning. She realized that this evening, carefully orchestrated with music, dresses, and guests, had been Daniel's way of giving her choice without pressuring her, without interfering. He had set the stage, but she had to step into it on her own. Later, as the evening waned and the crowd thinned, Emma found herself alone in the living room with Daniel. The soft music played in the background, wrapping around them like a quiet invitation. "You've given me a lot tonight," she said softly, her voice betraying emotion she hadn't allowed herself to show. Daniel looked at her expression unreadable for a second, then softened. "I wanted you to see that some things don't change no matter what else comes into your life. Some people stay important even when you try to move forward." Emma's heart thudded in her chest. She realized then that the night had been less about guests or celebrations and more about truths, about understanding what mattered, who mattered, and what she was willing to risk. She could feel the pull of the new. But she also understood the depth of the love and care that had been in front of her all along. They stood quietly, the music slowing to the last few notes. And Emma felt the weight of all the years they had shared settle in her chest. She understood that the choice wasn't about Lucas or about moving on recklessly. It was about recognizing the man who had always seen her, who had always been there, and deciding if she was ready to step into something real, something lasting. As the final guests trickled out, thanking her for the evening, Emma looked at Daniel. Their eyes met long and steady. No words were needed. The night had answered questions she hadn't dared to ask, and now it was up to her to decide what came next. The music faded completely, leaving only the quiet hum of the house. Emma's hand brushed Daniel's as she moved past him, an innocent touch that carried the weight of possibility. She didn't yet know what the morning would bring, what decisions she would make. But for the first time in a long time, she felt clarity. Tonight had been more than a party. It had been a reckoning. And when Emma closed the door behind the last guest, she realized the night had left her with two choices: step into the unknown, or finally embrace what had been quietly waiting for her all along. And as she turned to Daniel, standing there, patient and unwavering, Emma knew the answer was never about doors, dresses, or music. It was about the person who had been there, without fail, through every moment that mattered. The night had ended, but the real story, was just beginning.